welcome back. So, today we're going to continue our new player guide, and we're going to be looking at options and controls. So, where do you find them? Up here in this top right area, you'll find this little 3-bar thing. It opens the menu, and number 4 on the list is options, and number 5 is controls. Let's start with options. So, in options, you're going to find your graphics, sound, game, and voice chat settings. And we can briefly go through them. To be honest, I haven't really fussed around with these a whole lot. Most of this I've kind of just set to auto. I'm actually curious. This is on auto, so that might be tied to DLSS though. Normally I run things at 1440. I have it in full screen window, but that's because I like to tab out a lot. You could run it in full screen. Monitor I've set to auto, but it is what it is. I've never had it not pop up on my main monitor. I have performance set to FPS, but you could change it to these various ones. I'm pretty sure that this will change what shows up down here in the bottom left. Let's see. Yeah, compact and full. I feel like full isn't really showing me anything different, but whatever. I just have it in FPS. Let's see, we have NVIDIA reflex latency on, VSync's disabled, I don't have an FPS limit, we have DLSS on, it's balanced. What are the other options? Okay, we can do super sampling, we're not doing super sampling though. DLSS is fine. Let's see. Shadow effects are medium. Again, you can set these all up however you prefer. Most of the settings that we're going through here aren't super important. Wonder how far it would look. I probably could turn that on. I don't know how much that would matter though. But yeah, you get the idea. I actually just recently turned on the volumetric clouds and volumetric fog. I'd have to look at them side by side to see what it really changed, but I haven't really had any issues with it on, so there you go. As far as sound goes, outputs my headset, volume settings, so on and so forth. Let's see, game, I have the field of view set to 90, I have sense of flight off. I forgot what sense of flight does. I remember looking into it a while back with a different game, and I've just always kept it off. I have harmonization off. You can turn it on, and it'll get rid of some of the, I guess, more problematic symbols in the game. The thing is, the game's already pretty sanitized, so you have iron crosses instead of swastikas, for example. Maybe it gets rid of the hammer and sickle. I really don't know. I don't play with it, but if it's something that you care about, there is an option for it. It also has an option for nicknames. I assume that this filters some of the nicknames because a lot of people have nicknames in this game that you probably wouldn't be able to get away with in other games. Some of them are named after, like, historical figures. Some of them are a little bit more extreme. I don't see them all the time, but, every once in a while. Personally, I'm not really into censorship, so it doesn't really bother me. Camera shake, I'm actually surprised I still have that on, but regardless, I'm sure that there would still be camera shaking from, like, artillery coming in and whatnot, but it is what it is. Blood I have on, gore I have on. You can turn them off if that's something that bothers you, but it does not bother me. I actually prefer to have gibbing and whatnot in games. I think it's kind of immersion breaking if you see an artillery shell go off next to a guy and he's just sitting there normally. But the point is, in these gameplay settings, they have all sorts of different things that you can change. Like, let's say, for example, you have, like, 2 PCs and you want to play this game with your son. If you don't want him seeing some of these things, because let's say he's, I don't know, like 10, there are options for you to turn them off, if that's something that you care about. Personally, it's not something that I'm concerned about, but again, it's important that you all know that there are settings here if that is something that you care about. So there are different control modes for planes. Basically, this is going to be more like the mouse controls for Sim and War Thunder. This is going to be closer to your standard mouse controls for War Thunder. And this is going to be for a controller or a joystick, I think. Like, this is proper, like, direct full control of the surfaces on the plane. I do have a joystick because I do play a lot of DCS, but I don't really use it in this game. I usually just use a mouse. I'm not into playing that much. There are options to change the appearance of things in-game. I usually keep them all on, but if you wanted a more cinematic experience, or if you wanted a more hardcore experience, you could turn them off. So you could turn marks off, you could turn your teammates' names and marks off, you could turn your crosshair feedback off, you can turn tips on and off, you could even turn your HUD off if you really wanted to. I'm not sure how much it would change your interface with the minimalistic one, but that's also an option. And you can turn chat on and off, you can turn your awards list on and off. I kind of like the awards list, just because it gives you feedback of what you're doing. But if, for example, you prefer a more gritty, hardcore World War experience, you could turn all the markers off. I would leave the markers on, personally. But you could turn your teammates' marks off, you could turn the crosshair hints off, you could turn the interface to minimalistic, and then you could take the awards list and turn it off, and that would probably be a much more immersive experience. It's just not something that I've fussed with, but, you know, I might going forward play around with it and see how it works. I like being able to see my teammates' marks, but at the same time, I used to play a lot of hardcore games, and it's not the end of the world if I need to start recognizing people by their uniforms. Like, most of the nations in this wear very distinct uniforms, so it's not really the end of the world to start looking for the uniforms. And then down here, this is probably the most important setting in here. Basically, you can set it so only your group can use your vehicles if you don't want other people on your team getting in. Now, I can probably think of 2 occasions where somebody outside my squad came and got in one of my vehicles. And the thing is, if people are coming in and getting in your vehicles, like your tank or whatever, it's probably because your crew is partially dead. And so unless they're trying to, like, troll you or grief you, it's usually not going to be a detriment. So I leave it off. It's very rare that anybody even makes the attempt. So, I don't know. It is what it is. Settings there if you need it. There's also native language on the narrators. I like that. I just think it's fun. It makes your German narrator talking German, your Russian one talking Russian, your American one speak English, so on and so forth. It's something that I'm kind of used to playing with because I used it in War Thunder. Back in the day, I used it in World of Warships. So, I don't know. I'm used to it. You don't really have to learn that much of another language. You pick up pretty quickly with what they're saying, plus some of the words are similar to English words. Finally, you have voice chat options. Now, voice chat, as far as I know, is limited to your squad. So, well, I say your squad, but I mean the players that you invite into your little group. And it's not like universal voice chat for everybody in game. I've never really fucked with it because I usually sit in Discord. Anyway, let's move on to controls. So, There's a whole bunch of options here for your controls. This is your main controls where you can choose between gamepad, keyboard. I'm curious what modernized would do, but I don't really want to change things. This is all of your sensitivities and whatnot. In your movement, got your WASD, your jumping, your shift for sprinting, your, crawling. Well, this is prone. It's called crawl, but this is prone. Your crouch. Then in here you've got your weapon options. So some of the stuff I don't have bound because some of them are redundant. Also, you'll notice that some of my controls are probably not what you have or even what you would consider putting on. The reason why my controls are the way they are is because I have an MMO mouse. So if you don't know what that is, basically I have a mouse that in every way does all the things a normal mouse does, except I have a panel on the side of it of thumb buttons, and it's like a 12-button panel. I play a lot of MMOs, and I've played MMOs for like a decade or two now. Well, maybe not two. Well, like a decade and a half. Anyway, the point is, I really like having access to these buttons. It's just something that I've grown accustomed to. So originally I was like a console gamer with, controller. Then I got one of these mice. I know some people use mice that have less buttons on the side, and that's fine. I know some people use mice that have no buttons on the side. I just have 12 buttons there, and I'm used to hitting them, so when I play pretty much anything, I use them and assign them to different things. I don't really like moving my left hand around the keyboard a whole lot, so usually my left hand sits on, with my pinky on, Control, Shift, Caps, that area, and my thumb's usually on, Spacebar and Alt, and, the rest of the fingers are, WASD, QE, ZXC, that area. I basically like using buttons from, Control over to the spacebar and from, Tab over to R. And if it's past that, I can use it, but I tend to avoid using it. Like I said, I don't like moving my left hand around, and I can bind a lot of stuff to my mouse, so that's why these are set up this way. But the point is, you can change your controls however you want to fit whatever kind of hardware you have and whatever your preferred playstyle is. The important options in here, mounting your weapon when it works can be very useful. You should definitely make sure you're comfortable with your buttons to swap your weapons and use your attachments like the grenade launcher, or pull out your grenades, or use your melee weapon. Now, you can use a button to just throw a grenade. You can have it for specific grenades, or you can just do next grenade type, which is what I do. So it lets me pull out the grenade, and then I can sit there, cook it, throw it, whatever. And I use the same button for that I do when I'm in a down state. Also, I think your firing mode is pretty important. I don't use the zeroing distance that often, but on some of the AT weapons, like the Panzerfausts, it can be very useful. Moving on, these are your view buttons. The only important ones here are probably your leaning buttons. Everything else is probably preset and fine. Your squad, this will allow you to go into your different squad menus. So this one, the switch member and the soldier selection menu, those are probably the most important ones. But there is a quick button for your artillery strikes, your battle cry, so you can oorah! This is clearly the most important one here. And then you have different ways of giving orders. So you can give orders to your squad as a whole squad or as individual soldiers. The AI is pretty dumb, and they're not very reliable, so I usually don't give them individual orders. I usually just use my X command to just give them orders. Onto vehicles, you have your seat switching, your repair. This one's really important to exit alone, so if your tank is damaged, like let's say you're playing a Tiger 2H, very hard to pen. You've got it angled, and they break the gun, because they can't pen you, but they can break your gun. Well, you probably don't want to get the whole squad out because they're safe inside the tank. But what you can do is you can hit whatever button you have assigned here, in my case J, jump out of the tank and repair it, and then get back in. So then they don't mulch your whole squad when, you get out to fix one part of the tank. This one can also be somewhat important, toggles your personal weapon. So let's say you have a guy running up next to your tank and you have no roof machine gun. You can stick your commander out the roof, hit this button if he's got a gun, and you can potentially shoot the guy next to the tank. Or you can pull out your binoculars and you can make use of them. Other than that, we have shooting your main cannon, shooting your secondary cannon. This is for things like the Grant. Shooting your machine guns, very important. Smoke grenades. Turret 3. I wouldn't really worry about the stabilizer. I'm pretty sure it's automatically on vehicles that have them. And then you have your driving, steering, aiming. Switching ammo type's important. Your horn, it's the most important button for any of the trucks. You need to beep beep everywhere you go. And there are buttons for your transmission, but I've never used. Well, okay, I take that back. They say gear, but actually, I'm pretty sure these are your cruise control. So you can hit next gear multiple times, and it'll just put your tank in whatever cruise control gear you put it in. It's really just if you need to take your hand off the keyboard for some reason. Oh, and this one will pop your head out of the hatch as the commander. So you have to hit this before you can pull out your personal weapon. As far as planes go, most of this I don't have assigned. Most of it's not going to be important to you. The things that are important are your gear, your flaps. Air brakes might be important to you, but I usually don't use them in Enlisted. Most of the maps are not big enough, and I usually don't climb up to a high enough altitude for me to need air brakes. Also, a lot of the planes just don't have them. It's going to be a dive bomber thing primarily. There's a button to toggle your engine, but most of the time you're not going to need that. Maybe on the carriers as the Americans and the Japanese. You might need it then. Your throttle, this is very important. Your control surfaces, your rockets, your bombs, and how to shoot. Then these shouldn't be important right now. These are from an event last year where we got to drive around in walkers. It was pretty cool. Then here's all of your other stuff. So you've got votes. I can't even think of a time where I needed to use those. Your building repair, this is important. So per the changes that just came through, if you run out of ammo in an engineer's ammo box, you can refill it with this. If you build a heavy machine gun and it breaks, you can repair the machine gun without having to take the sandbags apart, so on and so forth. These two are engineer things. Let's see. You can drop your gun, don't ask me why you would do it. Your flask, your med kit, your paratrooper box, which is just the action key. I think it's that by default. There's a push objects button. I've never used that though. Let's see, then in your interface, these are all of your various options here, so you can hold M and open the map. That'll also tell you what your current tasks are if you've got like a battle pass task or an event task. You can mark the enemy, and you've got your scores. Now marking the enemy, you can put on a separate button, or you can bind it to whatever you shoot with. You'll put more marks down if you bind it to what you shoot with, but I keep it as a separate mark. I tend to only mark things if I think that they're important to the team and I want the team to hit it. But if it's something that I'm going to take care of on my own, I don't really see the need to mark it, so I don't mind having it as a separate button. But it's up to you. It might be more useful to your teammates if you do mark everything. Your game menu. Spectator, that's basically for the end of the game if you're on the losing team and you're out of tickets. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd be in spectator, maybe for custom battles. And then these are all of your replay controls. I haven't really used replays a whole lot, so that's that. Also, when you go to leave, it'll tell you if there's stuff you haven't assigned to. I'm not worried about that. So hopefully that has shown you where all of the relevant controls you might be looking for are and all the options that you might need to change. As per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.